Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Noor Riyadh, a Riyadh art program. We're so happy to be with you. I wish we could be all together in person, but sadly, at this point in time, that is not possible. Today, we're going to be discussing the Noor Riyadh Citywide Festival of Light and Art. I have three esteemed artists and speakers with me. We have Daan Roosegaarde, Kanojar, and Ahmed Maatar. Our discussion today will be centered around the theme of forces of nature. I wanted to start off the talk really because we're talking about the ways in which we can harness Mother Nature to make beautiful art, to make our lives a better place, and to make our cities even more beautiful. So for those of you who are lucky enough to be in Riyadh right now, you will have seen the works of these three wonderful creators in front of you. And for all of those who are not there, I hope you get to see them in person eventually, or indeed online in the incredible images that have been sent to us all. So to start it off, because we're really starting off at the kind of heart of Mother Nature, we're going to be talking with Daan Roosegaarde about his work, Glowing Nature, and really the primordial soup of how the earth in a way was almost created and how we're all sitting here talking to you today. So Daan, perhaps I know you're in Rotterdam right now, and kind of your work and your creations have really spanned a wide range of science, of art, light, of course, engineering, feats of manufacturing and technology. But what you're focusing on in this work is really about the most kind of basic elements of life.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. If we cannot imagine a better future, we will also not be able to create it, right? And a lot of time we think this is about technology. That's also true, but it's also about the power of nature and the power of light. So Glowing Nature, the piece, the artwork you just referred to, consists of 700 million year old microorganism that we've been growing, nurturing, feeding, loving in the last 2 or 3 years. They have a very special quality that if you treat them in the right conditions, they glow, they give light. Nobody really knows why. Some say it's a side effect of evolution, other way it's a way to communicate. And for me, it's sort of the beginning of life, the beginning of everything we made, as you see here in the image, a microscopical image. But it's also about the future of, this is for me the street lamp, the street light of the future, where nature is becoming a part of our daily life, and we find a new harmony between people and nature. Yeah, it's living light. It's magical.
And when this came to mind specifically for the Noor Riyadh project, I mean, of course, the theme, the overarching theme is under one sky. So these organisms are indeed underneath one sky, but underneath many layers of earth and water and really almost as far away from the sky as they possibly can be.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's interesting because where I'm now, I'm from the Netherlands, I'm in Holland, and we live mostly below sea level, right? So we've been fighting with nature, but we've also been learning from nature and living with nature through this ingenious system of management, of creativity, of engineering. And I think when we talk about the smart city in Riyadh or Neom or in Arabia in general, what can we learn from nature and how can we apply that to improve our life? And it's hard to sort of imagine, but just by touching them and feeling that they're alive, and they glow and they multiply, they grow exponential. There's so much still to be discovered. So for me, this is really the beginning of embracing the power of nature and trying to become part of it, trying to connect with it.
And the idea you are also playing very much with like light and dark. And I think especially when we're thinking about Noor Riyadh, because Noor, of course, in Arabic means light. And the theme, of course, of this year's festival, the inaugural festival, is under one sky. So it's very much about the idea of light, but then of course with light you have darkness. Yeah. So how does that kind of also inform the ways in which you saw this project?
Absolutely. So the exhibition here, it's a dark space, but the moment you touch them, they sort of wake up and they start to glow, to give light. And so light is not just decoration like the stars, it's information, it's speeding towards us. It's communication, it's interaction. And I think learning to appreciate the darkness, but also appreciating and using the power of light is fascinating. This glowing nature that you just see in the images, it's pure nature. You can drink it. So it and it grows exponential. So yeah, for me, this is the street light.
Have you tried that yet?
Sorry?
Have you tried that yet?
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can. So you become light from the inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, they're a little bit divas, I have to say, the algae, the plankton, because they have to be the right temperature, the right humidity. Their food is light. Very interesting. We feed them with light. That's how they multiply. That's how they grow. So it took us several years to figure out what is the right habitat to make them grow, keep them alive, make them optimal. But now we have the most light-emitting algae in the world. It's an art installation, but again, I would love to apply this to street lights, to rivers.
Describe that, because I know that we talk about your work in also very technical ways, but you have said that your designs do not have an excessively technological content, but are more characterized by imagination and a curiosity for the future. So in the context of glowing nature in the rest of your body of work, how do you try to balance that idea of really the materiality of things and the experience of them, but obviously with a very strong technological element?
Well, you got to understand them, you got to master them, you got to feed them, but in the end, it's about the poetry and the imagination and it triggers. And there's also sort of humbleness in it. We think we can control the world, but we can't. And these 700 million-year-old microorganisms, they've always been there, growing, multiplying, feeding, glowing. And so to sort of find a new sense of place and position within the world we all live in, and to sort of be aware of that, what we can learn from it is important. So I love technology, I love science, I love the team who works on it. But in the end, it's about you feeling connected with your history, but hopefully also your better future.
Exactly. So on that subject of the better future, I mean, so much of your work, I know, you've done, Waterlicht, the virtual flood, and Smog-Free Project, and things that are really about addressing, the most pressing issues of our time. And how can an artist really respond to that? So how does your work really, how can you make governments or, politicians or our leaders really understand the place in which an artist and the work that you're doing help make a better future for us all?
Well, I'm an artist, I'm an architect, I'm the son of a scientist. I'm surrounded by people who are smarter than me. I think what art and design can do is trigger something really important, which is not about budget or technology, but it's about curiosity. So art triggers curiosity for a better future. And that's what we need in order to improve. And that's also what I think this exhibition does, and the general thinking. And I want to go to places where people are curious, and that's why we're excited to be part of this exhibition. Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me about your experience in Riyadh. Then it sounds like you had a really wonderful time installing it, and what did you see being there?
Well, it's interesting, like when I present projects in some, for example, Europe, sometimes people ask me, "Are you sure you've done it before?" Risk management. But what I love about the region there is that they usually ask me, "Are you sure this is the first time?" So, and of course, I'm generalizing a bit, but forgive me. But it does say something about an eagerness for new ideas, an awareness that new ideas have to be shown, have to be shared, and to create a sort of collective experience where people feel connected with that change and that society. And again, that's the power of imagination. It brings you to a place that you can only imagine, and then you're going to create it. Indeed, we built the largest smog vacuum cleaner in the world, which sucks up polluted air and makes these clean air parks. We're working now on a space waste lab where, together with space experts, we're capturing space debris, the 8.1 million kilo of space junk which is floating in the universe, to, in a controlled re-entry 2025, make artificial shooting stars on demand as they burn up in the atmosphere. So these are complex, large projects, but they show the potential of a sustainable society, and it's great to be a part of that. But it's pioneering, absolutely.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Dan. Actually, I think it's a perfect segue to talk to Daniel, because Daniel, in fact, was also harnessing light and really harnessing the universe to be in Riyadh, and I believe just got back yesterday with like an incredible project called Bifurcations. Daniel, I think, I'm not going to do much explaining on it, because I think when you were talking to me the other day about the kind of incredible technology and a live video aspect of what you're showing, please tell us in the audience.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here with all of you, and just just came back, as you were saying, from Riyadh. It was an amazing experience to be there for the festival, and my project, Bifurcations, I kind of think of it almost like this digital lightning rod. It's a projection on what is kind of amicably called a zebra building. And what is actually occurring in this is you see these kind of lightning rods being projected on the sheathing, this kind of white membrane that kind of is very kind of idiosyncratic about the building. And this projection, even though it just looks like these kind of random lightning bolts that are kind of coursing up and down the building, they're actually responding in real time to storms. It's almost like a storm tracking project. We're looking via the internet at storms that are occurring in real time around the world. So in this studio, we created an algorithm that analyzes all these storms, their amperes, if they're negative or positively charged storms, if there are intra-cloud lightning bolts, or if they're vertical clouds that kind of go towards the ground. All this information.
I remember you telling us the lightning bolts that are vertical or that they go from cloud to cloud. There are two very particular kinds, correct?
There are two different kinds. There are many other kinds, but these are the main ones, the ones that show up the most. There's also the data that we're getting can also tell us the amperes, in other words, how strong the lightning bolt is, if they're positively or negatively charged. It's truly phenomenal that we've developed a system called the internet that allows us to have so much information in real time about literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of storms that are occurring at any given moment around the globe. So all this information is kind of gathered, processed, interpreted by the algorithm, and then projected in real time on the zebra building there in the financial district.
Generative animation, I believe you called it, and you think it's perhaps one of the largest projects of generative animation ever illustrated or realized in the world.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't have any proof, but it must be. It's an 80-story building, and we're projecting on several sides of the building, on 3 sides of the building. It's algorithmic generative artwork, and not to brag, but it may actually be the biggest one that's ever been done. Usually, when you do these very large-scale projections, you want to play it safe. You want to have a video loop that repeats itself. But once you kind of bid into this world of generative art, which I did a few years ago, it's very hard to go back. It's very addictive. It's kind of magical, where through an algorithm you kind of set the stage for the artwork, and then it takes a life of its own. So the projections that you're seeing, the lightning bolts never repeat themselves. They always change. Sometimes it's really busy, sometimes it's really quiet. Very much like a lightning storm, when you want to see it, you can't, and then it appears where, on the corner of your eye. That kind of tease is an important and playful part of being in front of the screen. And of course, a very important part of the art piece is the algorithm itself. And this is kind of what we see on our screen, where we're getting all the data and we're processing it and reinterpreting it. It was my programmer, Diogo Queiroz, did an amazing job, because this was not a tool that we can just, was not off the shelf. We had to create this tool to interpret all the data, to interpret all the information, and really, and this is something that I do in all my work, create an experience with data. I think that usually when we think of big data, we think of numbers, we think of pie charts, graphics. As an artist, one of my most kind of biggest ambitions and my curiosity is really about creating an experience out of this data. Have people not just look at data, but also feel it. And that kind of connection, I think, is what allows us to start thinking about this radical new perspective that we have via the internet, that gives us a totally new, different approach to how we look at nature, to how we look at the planet. And of course, I'm also thinking a lot about climate change. I'm doing a lot of projects with climate change, where I'm using data that we can now get, online about how, temperatures rising in the ocean, rainfall, deforestation, and create artworks that allow people to have a different experience of all this information.
So you kind of talk about our experiencing of data, but as well, it's about, like you just said, about this idea of what does nature mean in our everyday lives, and how do we then interpret data to nature? And, of course, we have, there are people in this world who are, climate change skeptics, and it's also about how does one interpret data and how does one interpret our place in the universe? Mm-hmm. Doing something like this, we've gone from talking to Dan about like the most primordial subjects, so the kind of beginning of human life with these organisms, and now with you, the awesome nature of Mother Nature, of God, of spirituality, and how we see ourselves in the world. Really, like lightning brings those feelings. I think whenever we see lightning, even to this day, I'll see a lightning storm and be in awe of that. And so for you to then have to interpret something that so many people think is a mystical occurrence. How do you then interpret that and kind of try to tell an audience the importance of really understanding that data and then interpreting it in terms of your work in climate change and really helping move things forward in that way?
Well, I think that, first of all, data, that's one of the big difficulties about big data. There's so much of it. The difficulty is interpreting it and making it useful. Thankfully, I'm not a scientist, I'm an artist, and I have the artistic license to be playful with it, to reinterpret it, to create not, like a clear scientific, visualization of that data, but to kind of play with it in the hope of creating this experience. I mean, this bifurcations is not specifically about climate change. It is mostly about electricity. And, storms are, as you were saying, the ultimate spectacle. Storms are mostly about electricity, and electricity is what drives our society. It's what drives our technologically driven society. So this kind of digital lightning rod that I created in Riyadh is very much about giving almost like an homage to this primordial source of energy that, amongst other things, built the building that it's being projected on. So there's a certain kind of humbleness, humility that I want to present when doing the work, of awe that, yes, we are harnessing that electricity that's out in the world, but it is not ours. It is something that we can kind of sink into, that we can kind of dance with, but nature always rules, and it always will rule.
I think you probably had the ultimate example of that in Riyadh last week with the dust storm. Perhaps tell us that was probably the most perfect combination of moments of nature, really showing you exactly who was in charge there.
Definitely, it was a very big sandstorm. My first sandstorm. We were working on the piece as the storm hit. Dust got all into the projectors and the little mirrors that project the images. So we basically lost 2 days of work, which made us work much harder, long nights to kind of pick up the, we were in really good shape before the sandstorm. It was actually kind of mysterious and beautiful and awesome at the same time. And again, you have to roll with it. You can't fight it. That's the respect that we need to recover. There's a kind of hubris that we have, that we think that we can manipulate nature. And when we think of nature, I like to think of it in a more kind of universal sense. But there's one added thing I like to add, which is kind of like part of my working with code, is that there's many elements about coding that imitate the kind of the copying and replication and multiplying that happens in nature. So in a very odd way, I'm feeling through technology and through algorithms, we're kind of coming full circle. And I'm sensing that in this language called programming, computer digital programming, there's almost like this kind of hidden DNA of how nature works. It's almost like nature 2.0. It's like almost like a mirror of how nature creates. And I find that connection is almost mystical in a way. It's kind of, you mentioned the word mystical, and there is kind of something very mysterious with the tools that we created inevitably are picking up on the echoes of how nature builds and creates and expands and multiplies.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel. Actually, also then, you're all doing my work for me. So perfect segue really to talk to Ahmed. Ahmed Mata, really a kind of a founding pioneer of the Saudi art scene, kind of having transitioned from, a life as a doctor. So actually, in many ways, very connected to, kind of the basic human understandings of science and our health and who we are in relation to our world and humanity. And now, kind of doing incredible work as an artist and as a leader in the Saudi art scene. So Ahmed, as our voice really, there, of course, you're in Riyadh now, still on the ground. And, I know that we are now talking about nature and, our place in the world and the cosmos, a relation to, living creatures, to each other, to lightning, and to really this awesome spectacle that we see in sandstorms and all, that actually I think reminded everyone last week just really what this show is all about, under one sky. Tell us about mitochondria powerhouses, please.
Thank you so much, Alia. I'm happy to be with you here today. And thank you for Noor Festival to start a new era of enlightening life. So I would like to start with one quote for Arabic in the nomadic culture, and also Dan, he just talked about the imagination. But here usually what they say the power of imagination is the power of change. This is famous saying in the Arabic or nomadic culture here. But at the same time, they talk about very beautiful saying about imagination of mirage in the desert. They usually say mirage is the traveler book, traveler book or map. And without the mirage, we will not continue the researching. So it's not about the destination, or it's not about one goal. It's about how we want to live and collaborate and enlighten our journey. So from this, I think in a big picture, Noor Festival, for me, I see it as a new era, new starting, a new beginning of exploring an opportunity for all of us in many things in life, in science, in art, in building new cities, and understanding our human settlement again, in a bigger picture of something all our communities now, especially after the last year, it's about healing art and nature. All of us will face these responsibilities. From all of us, it's about the healing, the time of art healing and cultural. And I think it's a beautiful, for me, I think it's a great that we are all here in this festival to think and also to reshape our understanding of art and culture and humanity. So really happy, and I think it's a great moment.
I mean, so there was actually, as I was doing research to talk with you all, there was a study that just came out in London last week about the ways in which light helps an entire city's betterment, and that the street lighting and the ways in which stores are lit and just public lighting in general really helps add to the well-being of a city and its citizens. Mm-hmm. So you being in Riyadh now, I mean, this idea of change, and so you're saying imagination, to have an imagination is to change, and this idea of mirage, and what is real and what is not, but what do we grasp for? And so I think in the context of your work, because of course you're our Saudi voice here, these last couple of years have been incredible years of positive change in the kingdom. And so kind of now really arriving at Noor, this kind of major public art festival and moment, how does that feel for you? And how do you think your work will evolve considering these kind of great moments of positive change?
Yes, two work I present on the festival. I will focus now in the powerhouse. Actually, this work was made in 2017, and I use Tesla coil and building a sculpture with the sand using the power of energy or the lightning power. The idea for me was coming from the mitochondria and the human, our body. I come back to the first empirical idea of creating power, which is for me something to re-understanding and re-futuring how we could make this energy in more living. But the idea or the exhibition that I make at that time in 2017 in Galleria Continua, it was more about economical, distraction. I call it, distraction, but all of us know we are in the very, imbalance in the economical. And so I started with this, and the main things of that sources of economy is the energy. So that was for me a big study, understanding how can we build a new future, because all of we need is a new solutions, a new finding, because everything coming to one shape of energy or one shape of scientific, maybe it's very old. No, the life doesn't give us that time to rethink and build a new future for this. So from the lightning and the powerhouse of creating this shape, it's taken me for different ideas how I can build from the locations itself. Imagine a new cities that we dream about in future, or the economical city, or the smart city, how the city could will build this smartness if we can. And it's in the same time a critical point if we called it smart city. Yes, it's a smart in the time of our data information that humans should celebrate it and take it forward with more benefit. But in the same time, I think nature is our, teacher, or like what you said in the beginning, the Mother Earth. But in the same time, we are part of this, ecosystem. So interfering and trying to build a new, that's what I did here. It's just a beautiful sculpture that come from the sand by lighthouse. In the desert, people, when the lightning come, especially in the Bedouin culture, and the next day they go to the place, try to find what's this lightning left behind them. It's a story of curiosity as well as what I said in the beginning. So I think that's the artwork. It's discussing the economical future of cities, or and more important, where is the empirical energy what body or nature will teach us for coming with a new understanding of.
Yeah, I think that idea of humbleness and humility, as Daniel said, I think is a really important part, and actually something I think all three of you have discussed in your work. And just one last point before we open the discussion amongst the three of you, I think such an important part of who you are in terms of the community has really been as a, kind of creating a community amongst artists. And I know, your studio space has always been, a place that's open, to the public in a way, and you have salons and you host. And how has that, do you think this idea of, we were just saying a smart city and this idea of lightning and Bedouin culture and, trying to find those moments for you, it has been incredibly important for you to create those moments amongst artists and amongst the cultural patrons of the kingdom. Is that something that you still see as part of the smart city moving forward?
Yes. With rather than we called it smart city or whatever, maybe a new name will come in this case. But I think it's very important. Usually, I said we didn't need just to focus in the building itself in this smart city. We need to also search and focus in between of this building and walls. So that's why I think community as a part of architectural studies and urban understanding of future and human settlement is very important role in community and society now more than any time before. And that's why I think part of our role as an artist or musician or to open a new era of sharing communal space, to open doors for discussion or people to breathe, to say something, to be easy to talk. And that's what my last maybe 5 years project, an open studio. People come, let's discuss, let's talk, let's drink tea and talk. And there is a lot of idea built through this. And I find it's important it's a tough time for everyone working, hard working, economical, pressure. So this will give us more brightness and positiveness to search and open new doors.
Yeah. Well, I remember very well being at your studio in Jeddah many times, and of course in Riyadh, but once when I gave a talk to this kind of wonderful community of people who were like, how do we become artists, or how do we join the art community? And I think, having people like you explain that to them, and then of course now having Noor Riyadh to show, a whole, generation, and really even like older, younger, it doesn't matter, but people how to engage with arts and culture, but also how to engage with these incredibly important topics of our time. Yeah, so just before, I just would love to tell the audience, if you have any questions, please submit them on the YouTube page. You can submit them in the comments, and we will try to get to them all, throughout our discussion. So please, come up with some really tough questions for our 3 artists. And then those of you who are watching in the future, I hope you'll be able to be with us in person and see these works at some point. Yep. So I think, for all 3 of you, this idea of, forces of nature and really harnessing nature, but with that idea of humility and what it means. Perhaps you can just talk about, how you got to this point, and then really thinking of Riyadh as the place that was, able to, show these works to a community, that hadn't yet seen, probably, I think rarely in the world have we seen such a festival of light. And
yeah, I agree, and I think the steps that the kingdom are making and doing this festival is really important, to allow arts and culture, as what you said, a place of dialogue, and it also inspires me to think about even what we could do more. I remember the last time I was there, I was thinking about what if for the next upcoming years, we talk about light, we talk about nature, but of course there's already a light festival every night in the sky, which is the stars. Then the light of the stars is speeding towards us 300,000 kilometers per second. What if, not this year, but next year, for 5 or 10 minutes, we would shut down all the street lights, celebrate the darkness, celebrate the stars, the sky which unites us. And maybe this is a radical idea, but I think these kind of statements can and in my opinion should be made and can be made.
I think actually,
that community. Yeah,
we're talking about this the other day about the idea of like shutting on the lights and seeing the sky. And in our talk yesterday, we were speaking with Amelia Kabikoff and Lulu Al-Hamoud, and talking very much about the stars in the sky in Saudi, and especially in anywhere that with a clear desert sky. The brightness is of another level. And I remember I was in Siwa, Egypt, which was kind of my first entry into the art world. And many years ago, and Ahmed, when we met, that was the year after I'd started this project in Siwa. And all of my Saudi friends said that Siwa was the closest place they'd ever seen to the Saudi desert, because the purity of the sand and the darkness, but then the bright sky, which I suppose was very different last week with the dust storm.
And how did it make you feel?
It's an awesome feeling, and I think it's also this idea of spirituality, kind of connected so deeply with, Saudi culture and, Arabic culture in general. And I think it's, has very much to do with this idea of what you see above you. And Daniel, your work with, dealing with lightning. As we were just saying, like when you see lightning, there's always a feeling. I don't know a person in the world who doesn't have a feeling when they see lightning.
Mm.
Yes, and I it's interesting because the festival is about light. Noor means light, but it's also about darkness. Mm-hmm. And the festival happens at night, and that kind of these bipolar symbols that are so universal, light and darkness, which are present in every culture, and they're being mythologized and symbolized in really beautiful, interesting ways. That's kind of what's at the heart of our kind of primal relationship with light. this idea of gathering around a fireplace at night and storytelling. This is something we've done for since the beginning of human experience. That, in a way, is still present in our fascination with these kind of flickering screens, with projections on buildings, with all kinds of experiences that kind of, I think, connect to that very primal experience.
Well, actually, we have a question for you on that subject, and really, you're kind of almost pre-answering it, from Federico, who was asking, how you interpret, thunderstorms then in the context of lightning, and what that means for your work and really for this subject.
Well, yeah, I mean, thunderstorms, as I was saying before, are the kind of the most basic, natural spectacle, many that nature offers. But I also wanted to kind of think about the city and about this kind of communal experience that Ahmed was kind of referencing. I am interested in kind of this gathering around a thunderstorm. That but it's of course it's a reinterpreted digital version of a thunderstorm. It's one that's about the thunderstorm that is piped in via the internet. It's having this new window on the world. But I think this idea of the city is really important. This communal experience of citizenry, or I don't know what the word is exactly, but the communal experience of being a citizen. A festival like the Noor Riyadh Festival is very much about creating this community of people that come together from the city of Riyadh to have this collective experience around these lights and dark kind of experiences. And I just wanted to highlight, I've participated in many of these festivals. It is absolutely beautiful to see how cities are transformed by these festivals. How it brings us out of our homes. It takes us away from our screens, which is another thing that I love to do. We spend too much time in front of our screens, to experience this other way of thinking about light and its relationship to darkness. They change our perspective of how we experience cities. It's a much more playful way of looking at our city, of imagining a different city and imagining a different public space through light and darkness.
Yep.
So, Ahmed, speaking of like your city, I mean, I think you will have seen obviously the difference in Riyadh, and you were living in Jeddah for many years and moved to Riyadh, kind of at this really critical moment in time. And this interpretation of electricity, it's also a question from Federico, how do you interpret electricity in the context of your work, but in Riyadh, and this idea of community and this festival of coming together, people in a really hopeful way, especially at this time. Of course, Noor was planned for last year without thinking of COVID. But in fact, I think the timing is so truly ideal because it's bringing people together in such a kind of happy and, mirthful way when we need that outlet.
Yeah, actually, personally, I'm very happy that I'm participating and with an artist that like Daniel and Dan I follow from long time and know a lot about their work, and many artists internationally here. And I'm really, really excited, and I think it's a great things. But isn't that amazing? All of us here in this festival for one reason, enlightening. To enlighten, to come with a new positiveness. So I think that in itself is a great, mission for us. We come from everywhere just for one reason, to create something good, nice, beautiful, enlightening a new future. So I think in this big picture, and then the name Noor for this festival also is amazing. It's very abstract name. Noor in Arabic yes, it's mean light, but like I'm sure in different languages, mean a deep understanding of light. It's like enlightening, it's illuminations. It's like this.
That idea of like artificial light versus natural light. You chose very much to look at this idea of like Tesla, the creation of the Tesla coil, this idea of electricity. How do you see, but yet at the same time, you were talking about lightning striking sand, and then a very natural way of looking at a light. How do you interpret those two sides of what we think of as light?
Yeah, it was a question for me in the beginning. How can we create a power that can shape the sound to be a stone or to be a sculpture by itself with the organic way, with the indirect, like a building sculpture, but I don't know what will come from this electricity. So that's what I like about it. And I visit many places in the desert that It could be from lightning. They call it Volgrite. Volgrite is the shape that comes from the sand when the lightning hit the place. Or so artificial or natural light. I don't know, philosophy as a philosophy. Yes, technically and scientists, it's something different. But light is a nature by itself. At the end, it's a nature. It's a light. Yeah. All of us come with one source. Even if it's an artificial, it's light, natural light at the end. Depending on how we use it, how we see it, how we receive it.
Yeah, Dan, actually, a question for you actually on that, and that, you know, how like the idea of nature and how really I see your work and we kind of started with you for a very, you know, particular reason, because it's, you know, down to the tiniest micro, you know, organism, the algae, and this idea of really, you know, what many scientists, you know, believe to be the origins of life and the origins of, you know, human life. In the context of, you know, our other two speakers here, you know, how do you see that point of reference within the work? I mean, I think there's like a really clear language and understanding of, you know, how we get from different parts of understanding just the most basic elements of living creatures to then being able to leap to the Tesla coil, to leap to, you know, data on the side of a building.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, I've been running this studio for 12 years and we've been developing our own LED microchips and drivers. But somehow in those 12 years, I've been moving away from tech a bit and diving into nature. And I'm a night diver. So you're right. So I go to Asia and I drop my body in the deep, deep, dark ocean. And your mind is like, what are you doing here? You know, you're a visitor. You're in a world you cannot control. And you move your hand through the water and suddenly there's light. And there were these one-cell microorganisms which were light emitting, and it just blew my mind away. And so they're sort of simple. They cannot think, but they reproduce. So you're right. It's the beginning of who we are. It's a very personal interaction I have, but it's also the future. You know, where the smart city like a Neom or a Riyadh or Jeddah gets to know to apply the principles of nature. You know, nature is not just there to admire or to wonder also, but there's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of, you know, power in it that we only are starting to understand. And Tesla was, of course, a hero in it. But so I think we should in a way fight against nature and build our habitats. We should live with it. But most of all, we should learn from nature. And we're just scratching the surface of what is possible. In my opinion, the future city is not technology driven, but nature driven, and is glowing with nature. Yeah. Glowing
with nature. I like that. Forces of nature and glowing with nature. Yeah. Daniel, I think also, I mean, your work really bridges, I think, the other two sides of that. So we have, you know, Dan and Ahmed, and, you know, your reinterpretation of what we experience, you know, right in front of us. So how do you see, you know, bifurcations, you know, evolving? Is it something that we can, you know, kind of use to understand more, you know, our place, you know, and just seeing something really live in front of us? This idea of generative animation I find so fascinating, rather than like a looped video, because it's so much more speaking to like our daily existence.
Yeah, I mean, there's a performative element to generative art. And in fact, I think it connects a lot to the tradition of performance art from the 60s and 70s, where it's really the artwork acts and is unpredictable. And the video that you saw earlier of bifurcations was, you know, basically unedited live streaming. We have in the control room, we have these 4 cameras that show us what's going on around the building. And sometimes it's extremely active and sometimes it's kind of slow. And that's the nature of generative art. It's kind of has a life of its own. And I mean, I also wanted to go back to this earlier question about artificial light versus natural light, because I'm actually very interested. And there is a major difference. Technological light is channeling, you know, energy, you know, electric energy, obviously, that we're picking up and using from harnessing from nature, but it is different. And there's a term that I think is a very interesting term that I was very much associated actually to the 19th century, which is the technological sublime. These kind of technological spectacles that, you know, make you kind of give you a sense of wonderment and awe, similar to the kind of sublime experience one would have of going out into the desert alone, or as being described, being under the the cosmic dome in the middle of the night and just, you know, kind of losing yourself to that. There is an attempt by humans to recreate the experience of nature, this kind of sublime experience of nature. Yet it always kind of fails. It also doesn't quite make it, but we do have that impulse to imitate nature. And so I think that's kind of a fascinating drive that humans have. Yeah. I would also add, and going back to climate change, which is something I really don't want to kind of miss the opportunity to talk about climate change as related to these kind of technologies that we have available. Technology has raised havoc on nature, and it still is. It is undermining it. It is over-resourcing it. It is exploiting it, and that is definitely a reality. And as an artist working with technology, it's something that I think a lot about. I really think about it every day. However, I also truly believe it is through technology that we may find the tools to repair technology, to repair nature, excuse me, the tools to understand it, including big data, which is very often used to spy on us, but we could also think of using big data to understand deeply the nature of how our planet is changing, and in that way heal it. It's talking about the healing experience. We desperately need to heal our bodies and heal our planet. And hopefully as artists, we have something to say about that.
Yeah, well, that's such a perfect. Benedetta was actually asking that exact question, so I'm so glad you preempted that. This idea of how do you find the balance between nature and you know, these forces of technology. Dan, you were just about to say something.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think it's really about feeling that connectivity with the world around you. As Dr. Fuller once famously said, on the spaceship Earth, there are no passengers. We are all crew, right? And got to be a part of that, which I love. But it was also interesting because we were talking about light and stuff. Do you know how far away the sun is from the Earth?
I could Google it right now, yes. But I don't know.
Don't Google it. No. I Googled it in 1 week, but guess. Give me a number. It doesn't matter. Anyone can.
I mean, it's, you know, a millisecond if we would do like a teleporting on Star Trek.
8 minutes by the light, faster.
Yeah, it's I Googled it 2 weeks ago. 148 million kilometers away from the Earth. 148 million. So that's like, and it's weird because we call it sunrise, sunset, but of course that's not true, right? Because before we thought the Earth is here and the sun is rotating, but it's not. The sun is here and the Earth is sort of turning around it, and that's why day becomes night. And so we're actually on a sort of spaceship. And this sun is sort of feeding us, helping us to grow, make day and night. And the Earth is sort of turning around. And when you start
thinking, got into very big trouble for that.
How many minutes?
And when you start to think about it in that way, I mean, it's just awe and wonder, and it's just a pool of knowledge. I'm sorry, I just wanted to address the power of the sun and the power of light in that way.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's perfect because we know that, you know, within the context of Islamic, you know, history and Islamic, you know, scientific history, especially, Ahmed, you know, please, you know, tell us more. You know, we studied that in school. That Islamic scientists were, you know, some of the first to really look at the cosmos and to really understand it. And, you know, we forget that now in a way.
Yeah, Al-Hassan, like Al-Hassan ibn al-Haytham, one of the nice name who write and try a lot of very important studies about the sun and the many of things and the how they but I remember from the sun, is it, I think 8 minutes something, the distance by time. I'm not sure if I remember right, but when we talk just about this is very nice. Yeah, Ibn al-Hasan, a lot of nice things because it's the land of sun. We have a lot of
I think that would be for me the logical next step, to sort of harvest the sunlight. And, you know, I would love to have a flexible solar suit, you know, which charges my iPhone, or having flexible solar panel roads, or, you know, just really just use it and embed it and make it part of the daily lives. And indeed, what you just said, Ahmed, it would be logical to be part of that.
I would like to add to that.
You're getting excited, so that's good, Ahmed. Yeah?
I would like to add what you guys are saying is that in the end, you know, the universe and its infinite creativity is the ultimate artist. And all we can really do in our own little small artist way is try to tap into that kind of magnificence of nature. And it's just pure infinite variety and excess of, you know, of stuff that's being created, not only on our planet, but in the universe beyond. So I think that as artists, when we are creating, we are tapping into that energy. It's a mysterious, powerful energy. It's an energy that is not about our ego. It's not about us. And I truly believe that we artists do our best work when we can put ourselves to the side and forget about us and our fame and our fortune and our success, and just go for the ride, because the ride is a really incredible one.
It's so funny. Sometimes people come to me and say, I have an idea. No, you don't have an idea. You surrender to an idea. You let the idea guide you. No, but it's true, you know, like, and an idea sort of, you follow the idea. You try to figure out what it wants from you. And you're absolutely right. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. That's so much the experience. Surrender. You've got to surrender.
You got to surrender to the idea. Yeah.
So I always remember the Olafur Eliasson show at Tate Modern. I mean, you know, I think it has become a very go-to tagline, but for me, it really was that. You know, it was everything that you read about, and it was, you know, experiencing the sun, you know, an artificial sun in front of you. So what we're trying to do here, I think, is like also thinking about how do these projects get interpreted by any member of the audience? Like, what would be, you know, what was the most exciting for you? You know, and you're all very lucky that you were able to see your works in person. You know, at this moment, here we are, March 20th, you know, 2021, a year after the world has changed. You know, how do you see your work so different in the context of what we're living now and in the audience?
We just launched our project Urban Sun last week, and it's actually also sort of artificial sunlight. Normal ultraviolet light kills viruses, but is harmful for people. And in 2018, a group of scientists discovered 222 nanometers, an ultraviolet light which is safe for people and animals, but kills viruses. So we made a sort of artificial sun. You can look it up, Urban Sun, which kills coronavirus with speed of light. You can walk underneath it to make places which are better and safer to meet. And we're now building larger ones for public events as an extra sanitizer, an extra enabler to make places more human and more safe to meet. So use the power of light to enhance well-being. I think that's going to be one of the topics for the coming 2 or 3 years. And you're right, we should do more in that way. Absolutely.
And Ahmed, maybe tell us, you know, your experience. I think, you know, being in Saudi during this year has been so different, I think, than most places, in really, you know, kind of the best way, because, you know, it's been this idea of planning and moving forward. You know, how do you see life being perhaps forever changed, but then also in some ways we do want to go back to what we think of as a new normal? You know, what are you most looking forward to into being able to reinterpret your work? You know, you've been now doing this project for your local audience, but how do you want to maybe, you know, reinterpret it for an international audience? You were talking about Galleria Continua, and I know you've come to the US and you've shown in the US and, you know, across Europe and Asia. So what is it that you're looking forward to after this moment kind of comes to an end?
I'm working in a new project, and a book will come soon. And I focus mainly in the new socio-political, you know, of the new generation memory, because for me, Saudi is a very young country as a population age. So for me, I'm more and more try to interfere with the you know, what will be the memory of the new generation. And the work is in progress, and it's not me, it's with many of friends and artists collaboration. So it's about a new statement of how we will perceive this change, and how we shape it. Like we are an artist, and we need to be you know, in the right positive way of collaboration and interfering with all of that. I mean, it's important moment. It doesn't have the final shape yet, but it's in progress.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and you're right. I visited several times, and you can feel the change and the progress, and what you just described. I can feel related to. Yeah, I just want to come back to Riyadh. next year and shut down all the street lights so we can look at.
Also have to shut down all the cars, so there's no. For probably a week, and you'd have to make sure there's no dust storms, because Riyadh has a very different light. It's not, you just can't turn off the lights. It would have to be a multi-layered project, but I dare you to propose that to the city, to the kingdom. They'd probably accept it.
You know how you can shut down the dust storms.
This is a good example of a simple idea which becomes complicated very easy, but if there is a place in the world where this would be feasible,
let's try.
Be there, right?
Yes, let's try.
And Daniel, actually, your work, are you filming it every night? Like, will there be like a looping video at the end of it that one can kind of see and experience, you know, if you're not there in person?
Well, I'm documenting the artwork. There'll be like a looped documentation of the work, but actually, in the spirit of the project, we're going to be streaming these 4 cameras that we have, you know, on the building. So when the artwork is on, and it will be on every night from 6 to 1 a.m., anywhere in the world, you're going to be able to connect and see what the project is look like, what those storms are looking like as projected on the screen. So it's just kind of like a webcam basically, but they're very high definition webcams, so you can really get a real sense of what the project looks like. And I also wanted to quickly connect back to your question about COVID, because I was at the opening last night and at the pre-opening the previous night there in Riyadh. And, you know, during this kind of tough year for all of us, our exits to the outside world have tended to be very practical. You know, food, work, you know, just keep it all to the minimum. This is the first time from my experience that you see like a whole bunch of people going out onto the street, everyone very careful with their mask on and, you know, trying to practice social distancing, but enjoying themselves. And that was just so wonderful for me to see people just enjoying the projects, taking pictures of them, talking about them. We also need to have those experiences to survive through these difficult times, to imagine, to see those mirage. I love that idea. It's the mirages are what keeps us going. To see these mirages in the middle of the desert and in the middle of the city of Riyadh, which is in the middle of a desert, to keep us going. We need to have those kind of experiences of wonderment and you know, just enjoyment also.
Well, I think that is the most perfect note to end this discussion. One of hope, one of joy, and indeed the things that bring us together, Noor, you know, one light under one sky. And we need to come together as you know, humans in our communities. And you have all found ways to harness these forces of nature. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today and speaking with us, and our audience who have provided us wonderful questions and positive emissions of light from around the world. So thank you all very much. And I hope that all of you can enjoy Noor Riyadh, and please visit the website and you'll find lots of information on these projects and many more. Thank you, Dan, Daniel, and Ahmed.
It was fantastic. Thank you all. It was a pleasure to hang out with the 3 of you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We should do this more often.
Yeah. In real life, though. In real life.
Please.
Real life and Riyadh.
Yeah. Come on, welcome.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.